Carol Mundungu. I'm a lecturer at Kenya Film School, and I want to present to you about documentary production process. The very first films were called actuality films. Why were they called actuality films? This is because they captured the real actual events. That's why they were called actuality films. So the first ever movies to be made were documentaries. A documentary is a non-fictional motion picture intended to document reality for the purpose of instruction or education purposes or for historical recording. A documentary is all about reality or actuality, which means the presentation of or describing things in their natural phenomena. There are 3 stages in documentary production. We have the pre-production stage, the production stage, and the post-production stage. While making a documentary, you need to be objective. In other words, you need to be impartial. You need to know who is telling the story, and to whom, and to why. And also, how are you telling that story? It's very important in any documentary production. I will talk about the pre-production stage. It's all about planning, and also it's all about the idea development in any documentary production. When you want to come up with an idea, it can be from any subject, any person of interest, any subject of interest, anyone who's doing something which is interesting, or anything which is interesting to the filmmaker. It can make up a production. That's why an idea must be viable and it must be worthwhile. In this stage, you come up with a documentary proposal. A documentary proposal tells us what the filmmaker is doing, how he will do it, and also why. Why is he taking on that production? The proposal entails all that. Stages that entail the pre-production stage, which is called you come up with a synopsis. What is a synopsis? A synopsis is a brief summary of what the production is all about. In other words, it's called the overview or the outline. The other element is called the treatment. The treatment is a summary of what is going to be done in that production. It entails the point of view of the filmmaker. It must be intriguing, it must be exciting, and also it must be interesting. You're supposed to show deep emotional ideas of that production. Why does it make it interesting? You need to show all that in that treatment. You need to show how organized are you in terms of getting the locations, the scenes, the timelines. Are you accurate in getting the planning stage? The planning stage will determine the objective of your production and the outcome. The end result of your production will all depend on the planning. In the pre-production stage, there is the recce. This is the process of visiting and looking around a place in order to get important information. Once you've identified the locations, as a filmmaker, you need to do a recce. This will guide you on what kind of information is on the ground. What do you expect? And also in the documentary production, you usually have a crew. In terms of the camera person, the sound person, they all need to be involved in the recce for them to get the information before the shooting process begins. The second stage in any documentary production is the production stage. This entails the actual shooting of a production. That is the documentary production. It involves hiring of the crew. This crew is the DOP, the director of the photography. We have the sound person, the sound recordist. These are the people who will go to the location and do the actual filming of that production. In this stage, it also entails identifying of the characters and also the equipment. By characters, I mean the subjects. Who are the subjects you are going to conduct the interviews? At this stage, you identify them. You also identify the archival footage that will be used in that production. At this stage, you also identify the music which will be used. It must be relevant. It must convey the emotions depending on the documentary. At this juncture, a narration script is usually prepared, which can be used as a voiceover in that documentary production. The third stage in a documentary production is the post-production. This is where the documentary is assembled together. the visuals and the sound, they are put together in a sequence, which will bring out the main objective of the filmmaker, how he wants to bring about the story to the audience. The post-production stage, we have the distribution, where distribution can be done to the local TV stations, or maybe the festivals, or maybe the local mobile cinemas. American film critic and theoretician proposed there are 6 modes of documentary. One, we have the poetic mode. Here there is little or no narrative content. The main thing is the visuals. The visuals tell the story in this documentary. 2, we have the expository mode. This is a setup of a specific point of view or argument from the filmmaker on the subject. And a voiceover is mainly used in this mode. The third mode is the participatory mode, where there is the interaction between the filmmaker and the subjects in order to bring out different emotions and different interactions. The third mode is the observational mode. This is where the filmmaker observes the real life of the subjects without any interference whatsoever. The fourth mode is the reflexive mode. This is where there is a relationship between the filmmaker and the subjects. This is where the behind the scenes shots are very applicable, and together with the actual documentary process. The journey the filmmaker has taken all through in order to come up with that production. The other mode is the performative mode, where the filmmaker's involvement with the subject. They could have a personal experience, and it can be used as a jumping cut when telling that story. There are different elements of a documentary which a filmmaker has to have. It's like a structure. They form a structure of the documentary process. One, they're the interviews. These form the A-roll. These are the main narrative of any documentary production. They give in the key story of any narrative, and they help in advancing the story. 2, we have the cutaways. These are the shots that invoke different emotions in any documentary process. These are very meaningful in bringing out the inner truth of any documentary process. The cutaways, we have 2 categories. We have the storytelling cutaways, and also we have the emotional cutaways. The third element is the general coverage. They are very important. These are the additional shots, developing shots in any concept. For example, if you are filming a race contest, as much as we'll have the speeding cars, we need to have the views of the spectators. We need to have people queuing to get into a stadium or something. We also need to have shots of the tickets being at the entrance or the exits. We need all these shots to develop they are called additional shots. The third element of any documentary production is the civil footage, which is also known as the observational footage. This is where the camera person follows the subjects as they interact with the real world without any interference. The fourth element of any documentary production is the process footage. This is where you combine the behind the scenes shots with the documentary itself to give the story. The fifth element is the archival footage. In every production, you need old stories to tell the story. It could be from the local TV stations or old photographs of any concept. I'll talk about the key steps in any documentary production. One, you need to tell a story that you care about. Tell a story you're passionate about. Tell a story you'll be able to gather more information. Tell a story that you will have enough visuals to propel your story. If you don't have enough visuals, you won't be able to tell that story, because in any documentary production, it's all about the visuals. It's all about hearing, and it's all about seeing. The audience need to see, and also the visuals need to convince them on what you're talking about. As much as you are passionate about a story, it should compel, and you should also engage the audience. Number 2, you need to undertake research. In any concept, you need to undertake research in order to get enough information about a subject or about a narrative. Anything that you are not aware, anything you're not sure, Don't get information from the subject. Make sure you have prior research before conducting any documentary process. It's very vital. Number 3, make a plan. How are you going to tell the story? What is the structure? What is the style you're going to use? Why is the story so significant to the audience? And how are you going to tell that story? Number 5, write a script. A script is a chronological event of how the various activities you need to capture in any documentary process. You need to have a summary of all that before undertaking any documentary production. The work of the scripts, it gives us more information about the visuals. It complements the visuals. The scripts always complement the visuals. They tell the audience more information about the narrative. The other stage is you begin editing. In editing, you need to come up with a sequence of shots, whether the visuals and together with the sound, in order to have a dynamic experience for the audience. The audience need to be engaged. They need to understand, what are you trying to tell them? What are the facts are you putting on the table for them to get the real picture about the documentary process? The other stage is check the legal and copyright issues. If you have used any additional shots, any music from other people, you need to make it aware. Make everything there in order to avoid the copyright infringement. The other stage is to distribute. You need to showcase your work, you need to disseminate your work, which all comes down to the planning. If you didn't plan well, you won't be able to disseminate your work either in the local TV production or either in a festival. My name is Caro Iremondongo. I'm a lecturer at Kenya Film School. My parting shot is that filming is an art, it's not a science. And the only way to learn how to make documentaries is to make more documentaries. Thank you.